I don't care. It's my thoughts and mine only. Only you can decide what you need for your work. The new Nikon Z6II. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you too are interested in the Nikon Z6II, and you're probably wondering how it performs, what the image quality is like, and is it worth buying from someone who's not paid to tell you so. In this video, you're going to get a link to over 2,000 straight out of camera JPEGs from my first day with the Z6II. And you're probably wondering whether you should get the Z6II or the Z6. I have both, so I'll tell you my thoughts right after this. Welcome back, folks. Josh with Shoe Photography here. Now it's time to talk turkey. So, to give you a little bit of background first, I've been photographing with Nikon for the last 8 or so years. I've had everything from the D90 up to the D810 and most recently the Z series cameras. I have had the Nikon Z6 since it first came out 2 years ago, and I have loved that camera ever since. It quickly became my primary camera. I still kept my D750 and my D810 for weddings because of the redundancy of the two cards, but I did use the Z6 a lot in all of my weddings. Now, in the last 2 years, I have put over 140,000 shutter actuations on my Z6. So it was a no-brainer when the Z6II came out that I would get the redundancy with two cards and the same or similar image quality that I get out of the Z6. So, what do I photograph? I photograph everything. I primarily photograph family portraiture and weddings, but I also do landscape photography, I do astrophotography, I photograph storms. Basically, you name it, I will take a picture of it. So, why the Z6II? If I like the Z6 so much, why would I get the Z6II? Well, I love my Z6 so much that it was a no-brainer going to the Z6II. I get the redundancy of having two memory cards that I can photograph and not have to worry about a wedding day losing any images, but I still get the same amazing quality of the Z6. Now, this is my third Z series camera. What I'm filming on right now is the Nikon Z50 with the kit lens. You have a review you can see right up here after I got the Z50. So if you want information on that, click the link right up here. Now, back to the Z6 and Z6II. So I have over 2,000 images that I photographed with my first day with the Z6II. I was very impressed with how it performed. So I received the Z6II on the evening of Monday, November 9th. November 10th, on Tuesday, was my birthday. I knew the camera was coming, so I decided to schedule a couple of models to go out with me and test the new camera. And that's what I did. When I first got the camera, we had a pretty sunset, so I quickly set up the Z6II, with it being the same as almost every Nikon and almost identical to the Z6. I went ahead and I was quickly able to set it up exactly the way that I set up my Z6, but I got it set up, took it out, and the first sets of images you're going to see are the sunset on November 9th, Monday, November 9th, out on my property here in Arizona. So you'll see those. Then you'll see a couple of pictures that I was just messing around with the pet eye autofocus with my dog. As I was just hanging out at the house. So you can really just ignore those. Those are up in like the 16,000 ISO range. But I basically gave you every picture from the start of the day I got the camera all the way through my photo shoots with the models. And yeah, so my first 24 hours with the Z6II, you'll be able to see in just a little bit. I'll put a link up here and I'll let you know when it's there. Now, the Z6II, I could definitely tell that there was a difference in the autofocus system, because I know you're probably all wondering, well, how much better is it than the Z6? Well, I didn't do anything side by side with them, but because I've been photographing with the Z6 nonstop for the last 2 years, basically, I could tell a difference. It was snappier, it was more accurate. You'll see whenever you do get to the straight out of camera JPEGs, you will see some out of focus photos, and I'll explain some more of those here in a little bit. Some of them were the camera, some of them were my fault, some were just because of the situation, but I'll explain those. Now, ease of use, it's identical to the Z6. There's nothing different as far as usability on the Z6II compared to the Z6. So if you have a Z6 and you're wanting to move to a Z6II, it's the same basic camera, so nothing's going to be different usability wise. Image quality, pretty much the same. I love what images I can get out of this Z6, and the Z6II is the same. Now, while I go ahead and blabber on a little bit more, I'm going to put the link right here to the Google Drive where I have all of the straight out of camera JPEGs. You can go ahead and click on that while I continue talking. So this is not what I do. I'm not sponsored in any way by anyone. This is just content that I feel people would like to see, so I put it out there. So if you like it, go ahead and subscribe. If you comment, like it, whatever you want to do, and share it to anybody you think that might be interested in what I have to say. So I have now had the Nikon Z6II for a week and a half. I did a sunrise maternity session last Sunday. I did a large group family on Sunday as well, and I'll show you right here some of the images that I processed through the Nikon's NXD RAW software so that I could edit the RAWs. As of the recording of this, there's still no DNG converter. There's a bunch of random things all over the internet saying how you can change the file metadata and read it in Lightroom and all of that, but I have done all of those tricks and none of them have worked for me, unfortunately. So I use Capture One Pro as my raw editing processor, and they said that they are working on getting that to work. So I'll just have to wait for Adobe to get a DNG converter out to start truly editing the raw files the way I edit them all of the time. The NXD software with Nikon is very clunky. It doesn't have a whole lot of options, so I can't wait to actually dive in Capture One and process some of the photos that came out of this camera. I know it's going to be pretty awesome. I am excited about the wide area AF box on the Z6II, so I can pick just that little box and only do face tracking or eye tracking in that little box on a wedding day. That's going to make it super awesome, because I did notice that when you're in a big group of people at a wedding and you're trying to get the bride and groom, it doesn't always know what face to lock onto. So that's going to be really cool on the Z6II. Now, let's talk about what I did with the models on the Z6II and what you're going to be looking at on those JPEGs. So I mentioned earlier that there is some out of focus photos, and there are. And I'll explain the reasoning behind a couple of those. So there were, I think, maybe about 8 photos out of the 2,000 that were out of focus because the camera didn't work right or didn't focus correctly. There were a couple of severely out of focus photos that were more so my fault. One of them I bumped, or a couple of them I bumped the focus limiting switch on the Tamron 70-200 G2, and so the camera could not focus all the way to where it needed to be. So you'll see a couple of severely out of focus photos because of that. There were a couple, and I did find, I haven't done more testing on it, but I'm going to. The autofocus, the eye autofocus, face auto detect, whatever you want to call it. If I go from being focused super close like this to super far over here, after a delay, it does have issues with trying to go back and get that focus. So if you're focused way in on somebody's face, or you're way wide, there is an issue that I noticed where it just takes it a little while to go and get refocused. I had to kind of help with manually focusing the ring a little bit. As soon as it got closer to where it wasn't insanely out of focus, then it snapped right away. So that's something to think about if you're photographing a model or a person or whatever, and you're focused way in and then you go way out. It may have a little bit of a lag on that. You may need to give it a little bit of help. Like I said, I haven't done more testing on that. That was the first time I think I've ever had that happen, even with the Z6 here on the Z6II. So it may have just been something I didn't notice while using the Z6 and never had that happen. But it's something to note. So if you don't need 2 card slots, if you don't want the new dual processor, if you want to, basically whatever the Z6 is now is what it's going to stay. They are going to do more firmware updates, I would assume. However, they won't be able to push them as far as what they're now going to be able to push this thing to. So when I first got the Z6 2 years ago, it was their very first mirrorless camera, and so it wasn't up to par with some of the other manufacturers out there, like Sony and Canon. However, in the 2 years, they have done amazing things with just doing firmware updates on this camera. It's like a completely different camera now. And so I would expect that with the Z6II having the dual processors and all of that, that we should be able to get a lot more performance here in the near future and even the distant future out of this camera. So I'm very excited to see what comes of that. So if you don't need 2 card slots and dual processors, and what you see is what you get, the Z6 is a fantastic camera. I'm going to be keeping it. I'm not getting rid of it. I am going to keep my Z6, keep my Z6II, keep my little Z50, and I might just be going for the Z7II to replace my D810. But I am moving more towards only mirrorless and all Nikon mirrorless. I'm still keeping a lot of my f-mount lenses because they're awesome and they work flawlessly with both of these, or all 3 of these actually. All of my f-mount lenses work fantastic, including the Tamron SP series 35 1.4 and the 70-200 G2. Flawless on all 3 of these Z cameras with the F to Z adapter, and just overall amazing pieces of equipment. They do everything I need it to do. It may not be what you need it to do. That's up to you. But those are my thoughts. Enjoy the pictures. Comment below. Like, share, subscribe. Whatever you want to do. I don't care. It's my thoughts and mine only. Only you can decide what you need for your work. This is Josh with Shua Photography. We'll see you later.